Here we go. All right, we are on. All right, so really quick introduction to me. My lovely desktop. My name is Rebecca Bean. I currently work as a software developer for the Office of IT. But I started out as a graphic designer, eventually moved into web development, and now getting more into user experience. So I just recently got certified with the Nielsen Norman Group, UX certified, and I'm working on my master certification right now. So I'm going to go over some different prototyping tools. So I prefer to build things. How many of you feel like you ever have a design bone in your body at all? Okay, well, I've got a little back here. That's why I said design bone. It doesn't have to be a full skeleton. I like designing, and I feel like I work faster in Illustrator, Photoshop, and now Adobe XD. But I recently took a course on paper prototyping, and I see a lot of value in it. So really quick, before we shift over, I just kind of want to talk about the reasons why you might want to use paper prototyping instead of just mocking something up really quickly online or on a program. And the reason for that is that when you use paper prototyping, people, when you hand a nice design to them that's all mocked up in Photoshop or whatever, have a tendency to actually critique the design instead of the content. So if you're actually wanting to see how usable it is, and you're wanting to make sure that they don't care about the fonts, the colors, the pictures, whatever it is, you just want to make sure that they can find what they need and they can find it fast. Paper prototyping is definitely the way to go. So it's always a good first step before you send it on to be digitally mocked up. So I'm going to start by showing you guys a couple links that I've got. Oh, it's on this window. Okay. So there's an app that's kind of a nice segue, I guess you could call it. And it's an app called Pop. I have yet to learn to use it, but it's something I learned about this last week, and I thought it was really cool. Essentially, what you could do is you could draw something out on paper, kind of like Joanne showed us a moment ago, snap a picture of it with your phone, and then when you upload it into Pop, you can select these little areas that you can turn into buttons that interact with other pages. So you can make an interactive design out of your paper sketch. I think that's pretty cool. So Pop is a nice kind of like medium. Is that Android as well, or is that? I was told it was just iPhone, but when I looked it up, it looks like it's both ways. If you go to the Pop website, it actually, because it's owned by Marvel, so if you put Pop prototype, it'll come up that way. It'll actually have links for both stores. So should be on both systems now. So that's Pop. There are a few other ones, and I can, if you guys email me, I can send you this list, or you can just write down this link right here. It's uxtools.co/tools/design. And then if you see at the top here, you've got this design, prototyping handoff. So it lists all of these different things that work in each of those different categories. So under design, you've got Sketch, which has been around for at least a decade, and a lot of people use it, but it only works on Mac. And now Adobe XD has come out. You can see it right here, not used as much, but it is coming into the market very similar to Sketch. Also Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator. I'll show you an example in a moment, but I actually mocked up a lot of stuff in Photoshop and Illustrator, only to find out once Adobe XD became available for Windows that my life could have been a million times easier. And then if you go to prototyping, you'll see ones that are based more on actually being able to have an interactive flow between the wireframes. I got a cough. I blame Joanne. And then handoff. I imagine these are probably a lot better at being able to help you hand off for design specs, maybe even code. This one at the top here, Envision. Envision, from what I understand currently, is something you can plug into Sketch to help it have more interactivity.
So yeah, we use, I don't know if you used it, but we're in HCI, the IT class, and we use Envision, at least in my group.
Okay.
It's super easy. You can just upload images. You don't even have to plug it in anything. You can just upload like hand-drawn images that you copy, kind of like Pop, and it does the same thing.
Awesome.
Like make links and stuff.
Have they shown you the Envision Studio that's coming out?
Yes. Figma 2.0.
Yeah. So Envision Studio is in beta right now. You actually have to request to have access to it, but they claim it'll be free, supposedly. But if you go on Envision's website and you look at their studio video that they put out, it's awesome because unlike Sketch and XD, they have the ability to say, I want this to interact with somebody swipes left or swipes right or double taps. Whereas in XD, it pretty much just assumes everything's going to be a tap. And then it outputs JavaScript and CSS, and that's beautiful. My mind's a little blown. I'm going to try it out as soon as I can. But for right now, I'm trying to get more familiar with Adobe XD because we have access to it on campus. So really quick, Joanne suggested that raise of hands who would be interested in knowing how to get to using Adobe XD here on campus with a license. Okay, yeah, about half. We got a couple people here that aren't from BYU, but just going to go through really quick. If you're familiar with software.byu.edu, we have I had a lot of hiccups with my installation, and see if this is going to make me do Duo. Nope. When you come in, you want the Creative Cloud. Now this has Acrobat DC. Let me see if I can just get the Creative Cloud desktop, maybe. Because previously I've downloaded all of my Adobe products from the software.byu.edu, and the problem is once they started moving into Creative Cloud, this doesn't have quite the same database of Adobe products that it used to, because everything's working within that Creative Cloud desktop. This is not working, but what I would recommend doing is if you go to Adobe or just Google Adobe Creative Cloud desktop app. And it should be just this top one right here. And then right here, right at the top, just download. And you can download for Mac or PC, whatever works best for you. I don't even know if it makes you, surely it differentiates. There we go. So at this point, it'll ask you to sign in with an Adobe account. Essentially what you're going to do is your username is your netid at byu.edu, similar to what we do for Box. And at that point, before you even try to put in your password, it's going to automatically skip you out to CAS, or actually, sorry, it'll ask you if it's a personal or an enterprise account. You'll select enterprise account, and then it'll skip you out to CAS. You'll log in like you normally would for any BYU site, and then it should be able to let you in. If, however, you get your Creative Cloud desktop and it says start trial instead of download or update or whatever, you need to contact your CSR, your customer service rep, or I think that's what it stands for. Yeah, customer support representative. So you need to contact them or your boss if you don't know who that is. And if you are a student employee that has a need for it, they can get it for you, but most full-time employees should have access. I think mine was a little messed up because I was moving from student to full-time at the time. So they should be able to fix your Adobe account so that you do have access to downloading all the products with the BYU license. So that's just a quick on that. So this is a list of all the tools. I'm not going to go into all of them. I have heard really good things under prototyping. Maybe it's under design about Axure. Here it is, right? That highlighted one right there. I've heard a lot of good things about Axure from my UX lessons at Nielsen Norman, and it's a very capable website that actually helps animate a lot of things. It is kind of expensive though, and as far as I know, we don't have any kind of university license. So, but just to know that that is a really good one out there, and clearly there's just so many because UX is becoming a huge thing, and prototyping has been around, of course, forever. So before I go into this video, well, actually, no, I'm going to play this video for you really quick. This is an app, and I'm going to put my finger on the volume button because I'm a little afraid of how loud it's going to be. But this is an app I had to design. I was trying to think, I need something I can prototype to show you guys to use as an example. And I was like, I don't want to build something from scratch. And then remembered I had built this for a class, entrepreneurship class here on campus. I won $1,000 with it. And it's essentially, this video is just a quick advertisement thing we had to do for the end of the class. So I'm just going to play it really quick because it's only like a minute long, and it'll give you the gist of the app so you don't have to listen to me. So, and it's not got sound. That's cool. I'm probably going to back it up. And then it was a waste of half a minute. Oh, I turned my volume off again. Frightfully glad. Okay, and it skipped forward. Okay. Okay, so that was just a quick, oh no, you don't want to watch my other videos. This is a Broadway review from forever ago. So this app show that we created, none of my teammates had really any techie skills or design skills, and so of course this was all on me, and I was more than excited to do it. It was my idea, and so, but the problem was I had to build this entire site in Illustrator and Photoshop. So you can see here I've got all of these Illustrator files, and then I pulled in screenshots to throw into that video and then built it all in Premiere that way. It just took forever. And so here, for example, is the rewards page that I used for it. And so I've got a little vector image of a iPhone, and then I plugged in all of these pieces. But each one of those little slots, it says Wendy's or Sub-Zero or Walgreens, those all had to be individually created. And, you know, I copied and pasted a lot, but it just kind of took quite a while. Well, as soon as I realized that I could use this app for this, I opened Adobe XD, and it's so incredibly easy. And I thought I had this open before, so I apologize that you had to wait for it to load. Who here has had any experience with Adobe XD or Sketch? I'm not positive that InVision has some of the same features, but maybe. So this is stuff that I pulled in within the last few days, in all honesty. I just dragged it in from, or copy pasted from Illustrator, didn't have to save separate files or anything, and they brought vector images into XD. Now, this is something you should know about Adobe XD, is it does not put vector images out. If you were to copy things out, it rasterizes them, even if you're pulling it into Illustrator. So this is all of the screens I have because the design tools that they had were, I had been originally working with an iPhone design, so I decided to stick with iPhone, even though I use Android primarily. And XD has this thing, and it drives me crazy that they have just a hamburger menu. I'm like, they're not on a phone, like use a full menu, but it's a trend and it's starting, and I'm gonna have to deal with it probably. When you're in XD, you have these UI kits, and Sketch also has these similar UI kits, where you can go in and Apple iOS or Google Material if you're building for an Android or with Microsoft Windows. And what it does is it gives you this file, which is actually on my computer at work, so I'm sorry I don't have it downloaded at the moment. But if you look at this file right here, this whole screen almost entirely came from the Apple iOS design UI kit. And what the UI kit is all of these little things like this battery icon and the Wi-Fi icon and the time and the screenshot of all of the other apps. They're all already made, and they're vectors that you can just pull right into your design, so you don't have to recreate it to make it look like an actual screen. And I just spent so much time in Illustrator on that other project recreating the top bar, and so it's just one of those moments where I'm like, I wish I knew about XD and Sketch and stuff before I started working on this other project. So in this one, really the only thing I had to add was this little icon for my application. And then when you come over here, just another really quick feature. If you email me, I'm not going to go through every feature that Adobe XD has. We don't have time for that, for one. In fact, okay, just keeping track of the time. when you use Adobe XD, there's a lot of different features it has, and there are a lot of them, from what I can tell, are duplicated from what Sketch can do, especially with plugins. But there's a really, really, really great video on YouTube that somebody's created, and it's like 35 tips it's like a 38-minute video, and it's like 30 tips on how to use Adobe XD, and it's just boom, 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 like every feature it's got, and it's wonderful. So if you email me, I'll send you that link, or if you're on the Slack channels, I can put it there. So really quick, one of the features I want to show you, remember this rewards page that I told you was like kind of painful to copy and paste everything? So I'm just doing a really quick, they have this thing called repeat grid. It's called something different in Sketch. I don't remember what Sketch calls it. But say you've got this Wendy's thing. Now instead of having to recreate all of these from scratch, I can click repeat grid while I've got that one selected and drag it down. And it's not doing anything because I already did it with the last one. Maybe if I keep dragging, it'll, yep, okay. Here we go. So if you see as I keep dragging, oh, it's doing it behind all of them. So it is doing it. This is really hard to tell because I've got this other one in the way. I'm going to just move these artboard boards out really quick. All right, now we got a little more room to work with. So if I click on this repeat grid, now if I click on the artboard, what I'm doing here is I'm not messing up my template. I am essentially just saying, if you're on this phone and it goes longer than if the phone is tall, you're just going to start scrolling. And that's pretty simple. Now this repeat grid, you can see it's starting down here because it's hiding behind everything else, and it's going to take me too long to do the layer, so we'll just look at it like that. But as you can see, it's repeated this Wendy's tab over and over and over again. And then you've got these big blank spaces between it. Well, I don't want that. That's not what my design looks like. So I will grab this Wendy's repeat grid, and you see how that highlights pink? All I have to do is expand it or subtract it, and then suddenly it shrinks. And it's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted it to look like. And even better, if you have a folder of content, so all of these pictures, I've got a folder, and I knew I wanted them to be in a certain order, so I put 1, 2, 3 in front of each one of them to make sure I ordered them correctly. But you could just select all of those images and drag and drop onto that burner right there, and all of those images in that will auto-populate. And then you can do the same thing if you save a TXT file and you've got like a huge list of names or a huge list of addresses, and you can make fake user reviews and all kinds of stuff like that. And there are websites out there that they have all of that auto-populated for you, so you don't have to come up with names like George Rodriguez and you know, trying to make up fake people. There's websites that have already done that for you, and you can easily auto-populate all of these repeat grids. So it's kind of a cool feature. Let me see if I can delete that. I don't want it to be a repeat grid anymore. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you guys really quick, this is all fun and neat, but when you leave the design area, really quick, I recommend looking up keyboard shortcuts online. Control-0 will back you out so you can see all of the screens that you have, but Control-3 will bring you into just the one that you've selected. And I had to look that up because it was driving me crazy to have to select it every time. But you can go to prototype, and now you've got, you can see my millions of wires here. Essentially now I'm telling it, if you click on this, I want it to go to this page. Click on this, go to this page. And so for each one of these, I've told it I want it to go to certain directions. Now, of course, this one, you click on the app and it just goes there. And then one thing Joanne didn't mention on hers that I would definitely like to make mention or make note of, when you're doing paper prototyping, and say you have a site for car rentals, and you're asking people to rent a specific kind of car, and you're just wanting to watch how they do the process and see if they get stuck anywhere. When you're asking them to do a specific task, you don't necessarily want to have to build out the prototype for everything that site can possibly do just to see if that task works. So it really helps when the user goes somewhere you didn't expect them to go, to have this page like this. In the case of paper prototyping, you've just got a paper that represents a screen that says still under construction, and then you can ask them things like, what did you expect to see there? Like, so that you can kind of mock that up later. For this app, there's a lot of buttons that I haven't created functionality for yet. So I've got this under construction screen, and then you can click the thing and start back over. This little play button up in the corner here allows you to actually use the app as if you were it was on a phone. And the cool thing about Adobe XD is they have an app that you can download on your phone and then connect your phone with a USB. After you've uploaded, it's kind of a pain, to be honest. I hope they streamline it a little more. But once you push your project up to the Creative Cloud, you can access it from your phone, and then you can actually use it on an actual phone and see how natural it feels when you're using your fingers instead of your mouse. So for example, here I can click on application. It comes to this home screen. I can say I want to borrow or lend, and this scrolls up. You can tell it which direction you want to go. Now I've got this menu bar here. It doesn't really have a true sidebar thing, so instead we kind of like make it look like it's a sidebar coming out. So instead I've got an entire page that's pushing over and pushing back. So in this one, the only one I have working, if I were to click on Jake Arwen, I don't have him set up yet. So that's still under construction, and I can go back to Nacho and start over. So I have Jessica Blake set up, and I can come in here, and I've created a switch type, and actually what's happening right here is I'm switching pages, and it just doesn't have any transition, and so it just looks like it's moving. And then, of course, the submit button doesn't work, so it goes back to there. A lot of sites go back to there. So I've got some really cool features on here that can take you to different places and just kind of get a feel for how the app is going to look. Now, if you were to hand this to a developer, however, by raise of hands, who's a developer here? Or programmer of any kind? Okay. So, I mean, you probably understand the frustration of someone handing a design to you and they say, make this, and you're like, okay, how big are things? And, other details like what font is that? And what's the line spacing, things like that. So Adobe XD has a few different things. You've got the mobile preview button right here, like what we were talking about earlier, but then you have the share button. Now the share has two different things that I've used. I don't really manage my public links or published links yet because I don't have a project out there that I'm updating and wanting to get updated info on, but I've got published prototype and published design specs. So I'm going to show you guys really quick. I published this yesterday, and I was so excited I sent it to my parents. So I told them, please don't put anything embarrassing in the comments, but if you get to look through it and want to comment on the usability, go ahead. So when somebody opens this link, it takes you here. Now for the prototyping, the live prototype, you don't need to log in at all. You can just see it. Now it has this sign in functionality here at the bottom, or sign in as guest, and sign in as guest works just fine. You put your name in there, prove you're not a robot, and you're done. And so let me sign in as a guest here. Tester, and I'm not a robot. And so how easy is this if you're developing a mobile app or a website that you can send this out, because XD also works for websites, you don't just do for apps. And then I go into this app and you're using it just like you would the live prototype. Well, yesterday I did a test and I said, well, this new notification thing looks weird. And you'll notice that the new notification has this weird little 1 over it next to the one that was already there. And that's because whenever I made this comment, it's got this little thing right under the make a comment that says pin to artboard. So you can actually point to what you're talking about. Because if they're like, this looks weird, and you're like, what looks weird? The whole screen? Or is there something specific? And so it's kind of cool that you can actually point to it, and then that's visible to whoever's doing the review or making comments in the future. Borrow or lend. And so I came to the construction page and I said, well, a lot of stuff goes here. What even works? And then I can reply every time I have a comment come in on this, whether it's from a guest or somebody that signs in, my email that's connected to my Adobe account gets an email saying, hey, you just had a comment made on your prototype. And so that way you can go in and respond to users that you've either fixed the problem or you're aware of it, or maybe you're like, oh, wow, thank you for pointing that out. Or maybe you ignore them because they're trolling you. So, I mean, in here I was able to say, oh, I'm the admin, and then be like, oh, my apologies. These are the things that are built out for testing, but you can try those out if you want to. So that is the live prototype. Anybody have any questions so far? Sorry, I talk at light speed, but I'm just trying to make sure I get through everything before we run out of time. So here, when you're in Adobe XD and you click on that share, you also have published design specs. You'll notice next to it, it says beta. It's still in beta phase, but it's works pretty well. I haven't really noticed anything about it that I am extremely disappointed with. So if I go to my design specs link that it gives me, it does usually in this case ask you to sign in. So there we are. Now, the thing is, I initially thought that this meant that I had to have BYU, like that I can only send it to people at BYU that I knew had access, but you can actually just make a free Adobe account and sign in, and then you don't have to have actual access to any of the Adobe products. And this is going to be an example of what would happen to you if you're trying to download. See how it goes to choose an account for, and say, well, this is an enterprise ID because it's a company or school account, and then it'll kick me out to CAS, and I'll sign in that way. And half the time Duo asked me to verify, so that's cool. Oh, it remembers me from yesterday. Excellent. All right, so now I've got my whole design set up here, and I can go into any one of these pages, and you can see that it's showing the wireframe every time I hover over everything of all the places that it's going. And then you go on these screens for the menu. They're all, I'm going to pick a different one. Okay, so let's say this one, that you get a new notification that somebody says he lent you money, and you can agree or disagree. If I were to click on this, it tells me it's Century Gothic, it's bold, it's a size 29 point, left alignment, doesn't have any extra lead or kerning on the letters, and line space is 35. And the cool thing is it actually will, when you're logging in and you're creating that design spec, it notes that this is a design spec that was created for an Apple phone or iOS, and it will make sure that it outputs, because I don't know if you're aware that like a lot of things use pixels, but iOS uses, I don't remember what it's called, a different measurement. So anyway, and it'll give you, oh, it's in points in picas. So that's just kind of an interesting thing to take into account. A lot of times it'll just give you the box shape of an item. But it's really cool because one of our struggles with building the homepage and a lot of other functional apps is we'll get this design spec that's like set in stone. We can't deviate from it at all. And then we don't get like the leading or the font sizes or the font types even, or what it's supposed to do on hover, which unfortunately is not built into XD yet. But there's a lot of things that if we can't get a hold of the designer, we just got to do a lot of guesswork and hope we're right. And then we have to make it responsive on top of that. And so this is a really, really handy feature to be able to hand it off to your developers and have a pretty good experience there so that they can get the information they need without you having to remember every little thing that they might need about that website or app. I think that's everything. So again, any questions about any of this? Yeah. If you put it on Creative Cloud, I think you can. I'm not super familiar with Creative Cloud. It still weirds me out right now, and I'm trying to get more comfortable with it. And so if I can find anything that helps you understand the Creative Cloud, its abilities, because I mean, Adobe didn't create it just because it's cool. Like they created it because it has some functionality. And I know that one of the things you can do on Creative Cloud is save your color palettes and other things that you're going to use on a regular basis. I know for BYU, we've got a set of colors that are standard for websites. And so we need access to those colors all the time, and Creative Cloud could share that with everybody that's doing designs. I'm pretty sure because, like I said, when I linked my phone to try it on my phone, I had to put it on Creative Cloud. I'm pretty sure I can share that, but I need to look into it more. So if you want, email me, remind me, I'll look into it and get back to you. So, any other questions?
What are the weaknesses of XD? What don't you like? Or where are you seeing it not being really fun?
So XD, I'm going to, sometimes I struggle with words. I'm going to put in a little declaration here at the beginning. XD started out Mac only, and only within the last few months, like within the last 6 months, made it available for Windows and has come out of beta for Windows. And so when I looked at Sketch, because I don't have a Mac, so I haven't used it, but when I looked at Sketch, all the functionality is pretty the same, and only you don't have to use plugins to get the functionality. The problems I do have is after seeing InVision and realizing what I was missing out on, it was the fact that it doesn't output any kind of CSS code or anything yet. It doesn't, which I hear Adobe has other products that I haven't touched, like I think Muse is what somebody said, and I need to look into it more, that do that kind of stuff. But after seeing InVision and noticing that you can't tell it to swipe left or swipe right, you know, what interaction the user has to do to actually tell it to do something, instead it just assumes everything is a tap. And like I said, I had to fake the menu coming out or fake a switch. Those aren't things that are built in. But some of the other things, I think Axure even does some of that. The nice thing about XD is it ports over to Photoshop, Illustrator, things like that really easily. I had another thing that I was just talking about and I forgot already. There's definitely some things that I would like to see it get in the future, but because it's so new, I imagine that those things are coming, especially with InVision Studio coming out and they have such an impressive interface. Another thing that's a little struggle with XD is a Sketch allows you to build a lot more on the interface, whereas XD expects that you'll be building it in Photoshop or Illustrator. So like this cone right here, which I discovered yesterday, square bases, because if it doesn't have a square base, it looks like a funky witch's hat. So when I was creating that yesterday, I had to do it in Illustrator because it's just so painful to use the pen tool in here comparatively, and then just copy paste it over. So it definitely depends on a lot of the rest of the Adobe suite, rather than just being able to do everything there. Whereas I think InVision Studio plans on having everything built in the app, which gives them better ability to output CSS and stuff. Any other questions? I think we're out of time. But... All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Just so I can get an idea of how I did, after the conference, we're sending out an email with a survey that's a little more in depth about like how you felt about each course. And it should be relatively quick, but just wanted to let you know that that's coming because I would like to know how I did. And if you have feedback one way or another, so I can make it better. And then we'll be meeting in the auditorium now. So.